Get off. Honey bun.
Right? That little baby did it.
Yeah. A little baby.
Her mother told her to come and do it. We'll open this place up.
Put it on
5.
To the chair, she walked. When an old friend died, I introduced her to my love. And while they were dancing, my friends I remember the night and the tears. Now I know just how much yes, I lost the night that to the chair she walked. When an old friend died, I introduced her to my love. And while they my friends I remember the night and the change. Now I know just how much after all. Yes, I lost the
very soon I'll ask you to stand, if you're able, to welcome the family and our guest of honour. In the meantime, can you just check if you have a mobile device that it is on silent? Thank you. Everyone, if you're able, could you please stand? Please sit down. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Founders Chapel as we come together to celebrate the life of Edward Kevin Dean, Ted to his family and friends, and Ed to many of his colleagues. One of life's gentlemen in every sense of that word. A much respected and sought-after specialist paint technologist, a son, a brother who was loved to bits and is already greatly missed. On behalf of Ted's family, Les and Uru, Murray and Maria, Joe and Ronnie, Ray, Karen and Rod, and especially Ted's mum, Kath, thank you all for being here. We know many of you have travelled some distance to share this farewell ceremony. Thank you for taking time out of your busy lives and for rearranging schedules to be here to support this family, pay your respects, and to finally say goodbye. We know too that there are people who can't be with us today, but technology, when it works, is a wonderful thing, and in these extraordinary times we have a live stream service, which means we can include more of Ted's family and friends elsewhere in the world. And I'd especially like to welcome Aidan in London, Carly in Troy, John and Leonie and Mania in Australia. We know you have us in your thoughts and we have you in ours too. I'm Leanne Fraser, and on behalf of our funeral director, Heather Young, it's a privilege to be in our respective roles today. Really, I'm just the person to help keep this ceremony on track. We have a framework, but a go-with-the-flow approach, because we want this to be a relaxed and inclusive service for Ted to celebrate his life, acknowledge his death, and to say our final goodbyes. I believe it is important to acknowledge that we're not only here because Ted died, but because he lived. And while we may feel that his life has been cut short, he had a rich and full life and made the most of his energy and time. He loved being outdoors, hunting, fishing, camping under the stars. Maybe that was his church. Ted was particularly well read. He loved doing puzzles, keeping his mind active. He was a great collector of things, although, as I can see the giggle in the front row, we could also say he was a bit of a hoarder. Good luck clearing that. He enjoyed all his boys' toys and had a great eye for bush timber, matai in particular, although it wasn't such a joy, I was told, when it came to moving this particular passion from property to property. Ted battled hard over the last year or so to stay with us, never retiring, even when he was so unwell. Even when he was so unwell, he was sharing his vast knowledge and advice to his work colleagues who rang up. He might have grown up in the country, but he spent his life in the lab, honing science, experience and expertise that has helped shape the world we all live in. Ted died last Sunday, absolutely knowing that he was loved, with his family. And during his brief stay in Waipuna Hospice in Tauranga, he was never alone. His siblings set up a roster and there was always a family member with him. And the family has a big thank you for everyone at the Waipuna Hospice. Ted said they were beautiful, exceptional people, and in spite of the circumstance, they made it his home. There was music, laughter, tears, and long conversations. When you lose someone who has been such a significant person in life, we grieve. And this is a different experience for each one of us. We hold on to special memories, unpack them at times of safety. We don't get over grief. There are no rules and no time frames. What we do is learn to manage it, and grief becomes mourning. So just be aware. Going forward to today, here's a little of what to expect. Shortly, Ted's family will take it in turns to share various aspects of his life story. And after this, and we really hope you do, you're welcome to share your own memories and stories of Ted, because it's together that we'll discover more of the person he was. After this, we'll pause to view the photo tribute carefully curated by Ted's family. We know that it's nearly impossible to sum up the life of someone like Ted in the short time that we're here in this chapel. So please do join us at the end of our ceremony to share memories and support over a cup of tea and refreshments next door. And before then, we'll follow Ted and his family to the hearse outside, and you can place a personal tribute on his casket if you wish. Ted was a much-loved oldest son, brother, and oldest grandson too. And to help tell his story, I'd like to invite Murray to begin the family tributes. I know it comes around quickly, doesn't it?
Edward Kevin Dean, born Tamarunui, 28th July 1948. Once again, as I repeat, oldest grandson, Georgian Kay, oldest son, Catherine Trev. Third in the pecking order, my big brother. Mum and Dad lived in the National Park when I was born. I came along, moved on to the farmlands. Dad was farming, Shermilton, initially Morrinsville, Tahuna, and then we moved around the Tiara area, several farms around there, finishing up in Manawaroo. We moved to Taugaroa in the early 60s. I can remember walking the cows from Manawaroo to Taugaroa. Try doing that today. Yeah. He'd always had his own bedroom. He was the big boy. I remember moving to Taugaroa and said, "Can I share rooms with you, bro?" No show, bro. No show. Yeah. He went through Taugaroa High School. He completed through Taugaroa High School and I did a technical course, which is back in the good old days, woodwork, metalwork and that sort of thing. He was the first boy in Taugaroa to complete that course and carry on university and bursary. Yeah, he was a very cool old brother. He was very aware. When I was in third form, Ted was in the last year at college, first time we'd been in school together. We were on a bus trip to Hamilton, a rugby trip. Ted was first 15, once again, as I say, and I was third form. We were having a bit of a chit-chat with my mates about how much money we had to spend at the tuck shop when we got there. They all had 2 shillings, how's that? I had my weekly expenditure of 6pence. Ted must have been, he was obviously in hearing range of what was going on, and next thing he popped his head over the seat and says, "Here, bro," threw me 2 and 6. He was my hero. I was always very proud to say that I was Ted's brother. Dad bought his first car last year at high school. It's a neat little number, a little 2-seater, home built, red, prefect powered, but man, it looked the part. He had to sell that before he went to varsity to pay his way. We took him up to Auckland, to YMCA, dropped him there, and there he began his studies, Bachelor of Science. He played rugby all this time, moved into some cool old houses and villas, returning to Tape on his holidays, did a bit of work in the bush. I think a lot of it was with Ronnie. Mum used to pack me off every now and again, spend some time with Big Brother up in the city. Little did she know. I'd arrive by bus, walk in the door. He'd say, "There's your bed, bro." Throw me his keys to his motorbike. "Yours, look after it." I reckon I travelled pretty much every road in Auckland in those times. The days of no helmets and no licence. Yoo-hoo. That was the beginning of a lifelong passion for both of us for bikes. He had a collection of magazines, left a collection of magazines, I should say, that keep me reading for many, many years. The only problem I had with that was that his preference was Hondas. He gained his degree and began his work at Stevens Inc. First up. Maria and I ended up in Auckland. Dinner with him was quite regular. Baked potatoes was his forte. But it wasn't long before he decided to do the big OE. Hop on a ship and head over to the UK through Panama Canal. Met up with a group of friends there and they tripped around Europe in his the old Volkswagen Combi. Did quite a bit of travel, Turkey or everywhere. Went back to London, once again still working with Inc. He met a lady and gave Mum and Dad the opportunity for their first big overseas trip to this wedding. He continued playing rugby, social rugby this was. He was telling me he saw most of England in that time, travelling around with a rugby team. Their end of season trip every year was over the Jersey Islands by France. Good times were had, he reckons. Maria and I moved to Perth. We got the odd phone call, the odd letter from Ted. The last one Maria took was a phone call. A very distraught big brother. Got home from work with an empty house. He was advised to get your ass back home, mate. He did. He returned to Auckland, changed his work to roof painting. He worked around Auckland, several companies from what I gather. Then he moved to Rotorua for a short while and then came back to Auckland, finishing his working life with Glenbrook Steel Mills, developing paint for them. I believe there's a few of his workmates here who will tell you a little bit more about that. I think it's about 18 years he worked for them. He worked well past retirement age because, as he said to me, they're at a stage of developing paints that with some very interesting capabilities. So he never did get to enjoy retirement life. Ted was a man who enjoyed many things in his life. Camping, his own company, mainly, as well as friends and family. Always willing to care and provide. He showed that very well. Maria and I arrived back in Auckland. Two little ones, Astrid and Reese, moved into a house in Auckland. All our stuff arrived back there. I had a job, but still hadn't been paid. Come Friday, we had no food. Ted arrived on our front door with 2 big bags of groceries. Ted's always ensured that Mum said, even she wanted something, he provided. I always offered to go halves, many times I should say, but the answer was always no, and I've got this bright. He recently upgraded Mum to a big room in the home she's in. Overlooks the lake, mountain in the back. Very nice. He enjoyed all outdoor activities, hunting, fishing, you name it, he did it. He had a collection of timber, like Leanne said, second to none. He had a huge mat-high tree stump, and that followed him around. But we had to leave it in the last place because it was a little too much. He kept himself fit. He was always riding push bikes occasionally to work. He ran a marathon, Rotorua Marathon. He built himself a perfect little hideaway in walking distance from Coromandel Township, where he had many weekend getaways. He lost that in the divorce settlement. His sheds were an absolute treasure trove of all his projects. Toys and tools. You name it, he had it. But I did catch a down on one thing. He had no leaf blower, so Les and I ended up having to sweep his driveway and decks. When he became ill, he was sent home. Sent directly to a hospital by his doctor. He had a very good relationship with her. He did a month of unsuccessful chemotherapy, then was sent home. He sent us all a text. Saying there was nothing they could do for him. I rang after a very short conversation. Asked him how long. 2 to 4 weeks, he said. I had to finish that pretty quickly. Sometime later, I texted him back a letter. I thought he's not going to get away with this. I texted back to him, telling him what he meant to me. And that we at least had the opportunity to say goodbye. I consider it an honour and a privilege to have been able to spend so much time with Ted over the last 12 months. For that time, we will be forever grateful. Finally, I'd like to thank all of our family, nieces, nephews, Doris and Henry, workmates. You know all who you are. Special mention to Ray, Les and Uru, unwavering support during that whole time. The no can-do, but always can-do attitude. Rest in peace, big brother. We love you.
I think Joe's going to come up now.
Hi everyone, I am Sister Jo.
That is what Ted always called me whenever I phoned him. I would like to read this poem because it reminds me of how much Ted loved the outdoors, the hunting, the fishing and duck shooting. I think more than anything it was the camping and the company and the swapping of stories that he enjoyed the most. The poem I'm going to read you is called When You Leave Me by Mike McGee. When you leave me, can you leave me where the big trees bend and sigh, where there's bird song in the morning and a river running by? I'll find a big rock overhang, enough to keep me dry, with a gap or two amongst the trees, so I can see the sky. When you leave me, can you leave me with the breeze upon my cheek, where the crystal bush water murmurs gently in the creek? I'll hope the place you leave me will have leaves to make my bed, and if I'm in luck, there'll be a mossy bank to lay my head. When you leave me, can you leave me with a billy can or two and a heap of dry red totra chips so I can make a brew? I'll live in hope a robin might just visit now and then, with just maybe a verse or two still flowing from my pen. When you leave me, can you leave me with my rifle by my side, just in case a pig or deer should pass close to where I hide? I'll keep a pile of dry manuka handy if I can, and I hope there'll be a smell of bacon frying in the pan. When you leave me, can you leave me where I'll hear a moorpork call, where maybe there'll be a trout or two below a waterfall? I hope that when you leave me, my mind is crystal clear, so I can picture faces of the ones that I hold dear, and my mind will bring me visions of the wonders I have seen, distant memories stirring lightly of the places I have been. Then I'll settle down and make the most of everything I've got, and you can be rested contented. I'll be happy with my lot. Ana Henry, bye.
It's a really appropriate poem, Joe, especially for Ted. Are there any other family members who are coming up before I open the floor? Thanks, Ray.
Hi, my name's Raywin. I come fourth from the line. Ted was my big brother. Over the last few months, while he was ill, I spent a great deal of time with him. And I got to know him all over again, really. He never once said anything about his illness. He never complained. He was just so staunch through the whole thing. And I think he was being strong for us, you know, and we talked a lot. And lots of laughter. And I always remember the night before he passed away, Murray bent over his bed to say something to him. And he very quietly opened his eyes and he says, "Not going yet, bro." But he went, and Les and Yuru were with him, and we made a vow to him that we would be with him all the time. He would never be alone. And we kept that vow, didn't we? And we all cried and had a glass of wine and wished him a bond farewell. Love you, bro. We will miss you.
I think I'm the only one he ever growled at.
You probably deserved it.
You did tell me why he growled at you, but I can't remember, which is probably fortunate. So right now, the floor is open, and we'd love to hear perhaps from Ted's or Ed's work colleagues, because it's together that we create the whole tapestry that was his life. So please do feel free to come up here.
Hello, it's a sad day indeed. My name is Luke Owens. I worked with Ed for 20 odd years. I've had a lot to do in coatings and supplied a lot of coatings to where Ed worked for many, many years. I remember meeting Ed in the early 2000s. We were developing some new technology for colour steel. You will all know the colour steel brand. And we were developing some new eco-friendly coatings, environmentally friendly, low volatile organic compounds, low solvents, water-based technology. And there was a team of myself, some of the colleagues that are sitting at the back there. I won't name them, but there's a whole group of them down there. And we all had a lot to do with trying to figure out how to make these coatings better, have better corrosion resistance, have good running characteristics, have better durability and approvals. So Ed being Ed, I soon figured out that this guy knew a lot of stuff. He'd had a career in coatings, as his brother was discussing, and he always was a guy that was always quick to give good ideas, always very slow to criticise, a very mindful, a very thoughtful person. And quite early on, a lot of us figured out that this guy was a guy with one hell of a lot of integrity, an excellent communicator, and was well liked. On the coating line, he knew everyone from the cleaner to people in management circles, and he could communicate seamlessly right across the whole spectrum of people. He was a nice guy, but he knew what he wanted from coating suppliers. He would tell you very nicely that this is what he wanted, and sure enough, he would stick to that, and he usually got what he wanted. But the nice thing was that he always got what he wanted with a smile on his face. I don't think I can ever hear anyone that said a bad word about Ed Dean. So over the years, I've known Ed, and we've drank countless cups of coffee and beer, and I've seen Ed with a new lens over this last year when he got cancer. I think we all know that Ed was thinking about retiring and doing some things for himself before settling down. And I think his sister might have said I've never heard Ed complain about anything. He just wasn't that kind of person. One of my colleagues, Kevin McGuinness, who's sitting at the back, nicknamed him over this last year as Mr. Positive, because whenever you saw Ed, I mean, he came up to his hospital visits, and he'd always have a coffee and a lunch, and a lot of colleagues would meet with him. He was always smiling. Nothing was ever a problem. All was well, but we all knew that all wasn't well. So I nicknamed him Mr. Resilient. His attitude is something that I'll keep close to myself for the rest of my days. He never gave up. He never gave in. And most of all, he had this way of accepting things that he couldn't change with dignity. That's how I'll remember Mr. Dean. A lot of his colleagues are probably sad they couldn't make it today, but just to answer some of the questions you said before about his contributions to the coatings industry in coil coating, he's had a huge contribution both throughout Australia and New Zealand, and I would just like to thank him for that contribution. Go well, my special friend. Go well.
anyone else like to come up here and add to Ted, Ed, Mr. Positive, Mr. Resilience story before we pause?
I just wanted to represent our generation. Uncle Ted was the cool uncle, the one who travelled the world and would always bring back little gifts. He was the one in the parties, at the parties, who sat in the background quietly and just watched with a grin on his face. Uncle Murray talked about the passion that they had for motorbikes. I think that's genetic, because I always had one too, and it was because of Uncle Ted that I learned how to ride a bike. As a family, as a whole whānau unit, we used to all go camping out on the river with our boats, and Uncle Ted would bring his bike. And we'd all fight over who was going to go down to the gate and open it up for somebody so that we could ride the bike. I went to say goodbye to Uncle Ted a few days ago. There wasn't anything to say in words, but it was said between us in silence. Go well, Uncle.
I'm not used to this, but this is my son. He is in the private. And I just loved him. And he had a generous heart and soul. And would do anything for anyone. He was good to his mother. Opened up to me. I never went without. If he knew that I wanted something, I loved my son. God thanks me.
He's only caring for the sheep.
Thank you, Kath. We're going to pause now. and watch the photo tribute that Ted's family has compiled while we listen to some of his favourite music. And this is our time to reflect on him, on everything he meant to you, and if you wish, it's also a time to pray. People much cleverer than me have acknowledged that none of us know the whole truth about death. Each of us probably has our own theories in relation to that mystery. As a scientist, Ed may have appreciated that matter doesn't disappear. It merely changes shape, and perhaps there is some comfort in this. Possibly the best answer to a death is to live life fully, every day, have no regrets. Before we move to our final words, I'd like to share a poem called Good Timber. I think Joe and I might have been on the same page with this. The second verse in particular made me think of Ted. The man who never had to toil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow in ease. The stronger the wind, the tougher the trees. The farther the sky, the greater the length. The more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, by rain and snow, in tree and man, good timber grows. We are about to conclude this ceremony for Ted, and while he had a full and satisfying life, it's an equally significant loss. And on behalf of this gathering, I extend our deepest sympathy to his family. We're here to lend support, extend our love, and most of all, to share collectively in our respect for Ted, who was such a large part of all your lives. When I asked Ted's family the other day what might have been his most significant legacy, without missing a beat, the response was that he was the best oldest brother you could ever have had. I know too that he was a much-loved son and grandson, a much-loved uncle, cousin, great-uncle, and a man much respected by just being himself. Generous, funny, intelligent, kind, straight, honest, with grit, determination, and independent to the end. As we've heard, Ted did things in his own time and in his own way. He may have been a man of few words, but his life touched and connected with so many people who truly cared for him. And to live in the hearts of those who we leave behind is not to die. Keep Ted as a joy and an image in your memory bank. Before we move to our final goodbye, Ted's family, thank you again for being here today, for your support now and in the future, and for being a part of his life. Soon we'll carry Ted to the hearse outside, and you're welcome to place a personal tribute if you wish. And a reminder to please come back inside afterwards and join us next door for refreshments. As you know, Ted will be privately cremated later, and before our final words, let's say together the Lord's Prayer. The words are on your service sheet. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, and deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please stand if you're able? We're standing here together as family and friends and community to give our respect and love to Ted on his final farewell. May you see the reflection of your life's kindness and beauty in all the tears that fall for you. May your spirit feel a surge of true delight when the veil of the visible is raised. And may there be some beautiful surprise waiting for you, Ted, inside death. May your heart be speechless at the sight of truth and in the light and lightness where each and everything is at last its true self. Within that serene belonging that dwells beside us, on the other side of what we see. With wonderful memories of a beloved son, brother, uncle, colleague and friend, we say a final goodbye to this dignified, kind man who never gave up on living, and we acknowledge a well-lived life and a legacy that will go on. And now we tenderly and reverently commit the body of Edward Kevin Dean to be cremated, grateful for the life that has been lived and for all that life has meant to us. We're glad that Ted lived. We are glad that we saw his face. We are glad that we felt the pressure of his hand in ours. We cherished the memory of his bravery, his character, and his family life, his place in history. We cherish his friendship and most of all, his love. For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind, to melt into the sun, and what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that they may rise and expand and seek the spirit unencumbered. Ted, we thank you for your life, and now, as family and friends and colleagues, we stand here to lovingly and respectfully say goodbye. Aloha atu, aloha mai. Give love and receive love, and may you rest in peace.
John Boyd.
Hi, Mariah. Joe. Hannah.
We're just going to get used to it.